What's up, Knicks fans? We are back again for another season with our friends at Fanatic Sportsbook. And of course, that means we're talking about Fan Cash. Now, most sportsbooks, their rewards are just fluff, but Fan Cash is the ultimate sports currency. You see, when you bet with Fanatic Sportsbook, you get up to 10% fan cash back on your wagers, win or lose. And did I mention that they're giving away millions in fan cash this year? And you can use that fan cash on anything in the Fanatics universe? Go check it out for yourself and download the app today. Fanatic Sportsbook. Winning hits different here. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. My name is Andrew Claudio. It is time for another season previewing Knicks games. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to talk about a very potentially exciting Knicks season that's about to get underway Wednesday night, or I guess at the time that you're watching this, tonight. We have Knicks basketball within our midst. It's so great to not be talking about the preseason and whether or not they're going to play 5 out and who's starting and whether or not Mitch's injury is real, which I'm very much concerned about. I'm excited to be back. If it's your first time joining us here, we like to do a pregame show that releases 12 hours before tip-off of every Knicks game. I'll be here all season long with an out-of-town guest to give the expert perspective on the other team. And I'm happy, if you're here for the first time, that you get to meet my very good friend from my home away from home, as people have started to call it, because I keep making appearances on the Chase Down podcast, which is the official Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. You can check out all their episodes over at their YouTube channel. And joining me now here on the Knicks Film School YouTube channel, Cavzanada himself. I believe I said his name correct, his @ correctly. Justin Rowan, welcome back to Knicks Film School, sir.
Dude, thank you so much for having me back. Excited to have this season kick off. I went back and I looked at the last time I came on for one of these. I think it was like 4th game of the season or something like that. And I remember catching a lot of flack in the comments for saying that I believe that the Cavs could be a 1 seed. You know, at the time, I was saying I still think I put the Celtics ahead of them come playoffs. They still have a lot to prove. But I was really confident coming into that season. I got a lot of flack for it. So I feel both good about that. And I also feel like I can't puff out my chest because the Cavs still have to prove it in the postseason. And that is really the theme of this team heading into this year.
So it's very interesting that you're going back to before the season with where you're looking for the braggadocio and trying to puff your chest out. Because, look, I talked to Carter later in the season. I talked to some Cavs people throughout the year when the Knicks played the Cavs. Like, I didn't expect to be playing the Cavs at any point because, the way the season shaped out, the Knicks couldn't beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, went 0-4 last season. I would be lying, and I think any Knicks fan with some truth serum would be lying if they didn't think this season was going to end at the hands of the Boston Celtics in the second round, and then we'd get to watch what these 2 60-win teams would do to battle it out. And I was shocked now that I can sit here across from you to start the following season. Obviously, some health stuff happened with Halliburton and Jason Tatum. But the fact that I can sit here a year later and say the Knicks got further than the Cleveland Cavaliers is just not something I expected to say for the majority of last season, which, you're right, leads into what I believe is the biggest question for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I want to start with how the season ended. For Knicks fans that didn't check out our crossover that we did a couple weeks ago, the Knicks hadn't finalized their roster at that point either. So it's good to discuss stuff now. The reaction from the fan base when you went out the way they did, or they went out the way they did, you went out the way you did. I know you're technically you're an employee of the Cavs, so you get to say we, and it means something. Just like how was the end of the season from your perspective and from the fan base perspective, losing to the Pacers the way they did?
It was really crushing because obviously it was such a thrilling season. Everything across the board was so strong, right? Like in the past, when the Cavs lost to the Knicks in the first round, you could at least say, "Hey, look at the matchup data from the season." Right? They didn't play well against the Knicks. Their offense struggled more against the Knicks than any team in the league. Record against some of the better teams was a little shaky at times. There were things that you could point to. That wasn't the case last year. The Cavs had the best record against the Western Conference. They swept the Knicks. They played well against the Celtics fully healthy, right? They played well against the Pacers. They had the most clutch wins in the NBA, right? Everything was there. And the frustrating thing with that Pacers series is it really felt like a lot of those injuries kind of almost leveled the playing field. Like they still had a chance in each of those individual games. And I think it leveled the playing field to the point where maybe some of those flaws started to show up. Because even though the Cavs were so good in the clutch last year, they did go away from Evan Mobley in those spots. They really relied on the two guards to produce in those spots, particularly Darius Garland, who, was among the best clutch players in the NBA last season. Without Garland in the mix, you kind of had Mitchell running the show. That Mobley usage late wasn't there. And I think that ended up kind of rearing its ugly head in some of these close losses to the Pacers. So I do think that they would have beat Indiana if they were healthy. But I think the injuries leveled the playing field to where it exposed just the little spots where they still need a little bit extra maturity. And I think that's the kind of thing that would have shown up against the Thunder, who are a team that applies that same kind of defensive pressure as the Pacers, but with much better defensive personnel. So I think it would have come back to bite them eventually. It just exposed the flaw a little bit earlier than, we were expecting.
So then 2 follow-ups. The first one, you mentioned the injuries and leveling the playing field and the fact that what was a 64-win dominant team now was more even with what the Pacers were doing. I mean, just going into this season and the regular 82-game sample that we're about to have, how much importance do you put on it when there could be the fear that we could win 65 games this year and have all that regular season data be pointing in our direction? But if come playoff time, we're not healthy, or basically, do you think they'll try to pace themselves more, or the regular season mean a little bit less going into the playoffs this year?
I think to some extent, but at the same time, they did that last season, right? Like it was a career low in minutes for Donovan Mitchell, career low like in usage. They managed things really, really well. One of the unfortunate things, and Kenny talked about this, he talked about how he wanted to do a ramp up in March and April. The unfortunate thing was Cleveland hosted the NCAA tournament, they hosted the MAC tournament, and they hosted some other events in March. And the result of that was from February through March, they didn't have 2 games in a row in the same city for 30 games pretty much. They were on the road. Even the games in Cleveland was, hey, we're playing in Cleveland and we're leaving the night off, right? So they were on the road the entire time. And I think that had some wear and tear on their body, right? Like there was no homestand late. You started to see Donovan Mitchell started to wear down a little bit over that stretch. I think the last 3 months of the season, including playoffs, he was basically shooting like 40-20 or like 38-20, something like that. Darius was the only one that they kind of kept playing, where Donovan and Ty kind of got some rest there, but it was really difficult on them. And the other thing Kenny said is it's kind of tough for me to ramp up because even though we were struggling physically and individually, we're still blowing teams out consistently. So you're getting that rest in the fourth quarter and you're trying to manage all of the kind of nagging stuff. But I do think no matter what happens in the regular season, the health is going to be the biggest question, right? Like Garland is tricky because it's fluke stuff, right? Like the year prior breaks his jaw, loses 15 pounds because he's, eating through a tube and he has his jaw wired shut for 2 months, right? Just wasn't himself. He wasn't going to bounce back from that situation. Mitchell worries me a little bit because this is now 2 seasons in a row that he's had a left calf strain in the playoffs, right? That's I think everyone has an increased focus on those calf injuries and things like that. You hope that maybe there's just bad luck or whatever the case may be. It's not something that lingered throughout the season, but it is 2 years in a row, 2 years in a row that he's had that issue, and he was a little banged up against the Knicks as well. So whether this team can actually be healthy through a playoff run is the biggest concern. And regardless of how I feel about the Cavs and how they match up against the Knicks, I'm not going to get on anybody for picking any other team other than the Cavs, because the Cavs need to prove that they can be healthy for a playoff run. And then when they are healthy, there's still the questions about, can they perform at that level? How is everything going to translate? We just don't have a great sample size of that. So with that many questions remaining, it's tough to get on anybody. And like I said at the start, puff out my chest here.
It's interesting because like the Knicks, for a Tom Thibodeau team, you can't point to injuries or the team was worn down or he ran his team into the ground or anything like that for how the season ended last year. He may not utilize the bench as much as he could have last year. I would beg to differ that utilizing Precious Achiuwa, who is no longer on an NBA roster, and Campaign, who hasn't been signed anywhere, isn't always like the coach's fault. But it was mainly an X's and O's thing. And I was thinking in my projections, like getting ready for this season, like if the advantages that I would put the Knicks at of being like 2 wins away from the finals, and now the team that beat them and the biggest threat they faced during the playoffs last year, the Celtics, is gone. Yeah. Well, the natural step is like, oh, they'll just get to the next round. And I just like, man, are they ever going to have that type of health luck going into the playoffs again? And I wonder if from a Cavs perspective, the opposite is now in play. Like, hey, we'll be healthier this year. We'll get the health luck this year, that we won't go into the playoffs and like suddenly like our guys start to break down.
Yeah.
Just what was your perspective of how the Knicks Pacers series went? Obviously seeing what the Pacers did to the Cavs, then they do what they did to the Knicks in game 1, which was similar to the Pacers Cavs game in game 2. Then they do it to the Thunder in game 1 of the finals. And all of us, I think, were like, yep, that's the Pacers for you. How did you experience the Knicks Pacers series, at least?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, right? Like that Pacers series was incredibly frustrating. Don't get me wrong, right? Like that game 2 is going to haunt me forever. The 2 lane violations, if either of them gets called properly, the Cavs win that game. Donovan straining his calf in the fourth quarter was brutal. But the narrative with the Cavs is always, the defense of the small backcourt and things like that. That has never, and once again, has never been an issue, right? Like even when it was Garland and Mitchell against the Celtics and no Jared Allen in the lineup, they had a great defensive rating against the Celtics, and they even won their minutes with Mobley and Max Strus out there. It was funny with, people were, the constant thing is you got to trade either Garland or Allen for a wing. You need to kind of get these prototypical defensive wings. And when you're talking about role player defensive 3 and D wings, there's not really better examples than OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, right? Like that's kind of the gold standard. And even with all of the Cavs injuries, Garland playing on 1 foot, Mitchell's calf, Mobley missing time, Hunter missing time, everything that went wrong in that series, the Cavs still had a much better defensive rating against the Pacers than the Knicks did by almost 2 points. And Miles Turner wasn't shooting 60% from 3 like he did against the Cavs. He shot like crap. Thomas Bryant wasn't shooting 60% from 3 like he did against the Cavs. He didn't shoot as well, right? So even with all of those factors, the defense still held up. And that's kind of one of like the foundational things that I feel good about with the Cavs is the issue has been offense in the playoffs. And if you look historically at the last 4 years, the Cavs offense with Garland on versus Garland off has been dramatically different. So when you look at these last 2 years in the playoffs where he is just, a shell of himself, the prior year and obviously against Indiana with an injury and a subsequent surgery that's going to keep him out of opening night against the Knicks, that was a pretty damn significant injury, right? So you at least feel like you had that ace up your sleeve because against Miami, I don't know how much you watched that series. Garland was their leading scorer. He was their best player through 2 games, right? Like as much as Miami talk crap about his defense, you look at the tracking numbers and they did nothing against Garland defensively, right? Like it felt like everything was coming together and then he lands on a fan courtside and everything goes to crap.
Brother, I can't wait to talk to Giancarlo this weekend when the Knicks play the Heat. Oh boy, did I watch that that Cavs Heat series. It was, I had a cigarette and a glass of wine. It was just like, I'm going to watch them end Heat culture forever. I'm sure 15 years later after the decision, that was a bit cathartic as well.
It felt good. Carter and I were there for games 1 and 2 and it felt great. Even better.
And I'm only still like 1% terrified of Heat culture suddenly finding its way through Norm Powell and
right.
Whatever roster they put together this year. So I ask this every year to the first time I see a guest, the first time the Knicks see a team. And it's so much more significant for your team and the opponent the Knicks face here, because I think it directly coincides with the same answer as the Knicks. So a disappointing season for the Cavs looks like what? And I add the caveat, is losing in the conference finals to the Knicks an acceptable outcome at all? Like, if they get to a game 7 of the conference finals, it's still the furthest they've been without LeBron. Is that acceptable at all to the Cleveland Cavaliers and their fans?
I don't think so. I think they have to make a finals. This core has been together for a while. You're kind of in that first year of the second apron. It forces, an accelerated timeline, right? At this point, like, if the Cavs are fully healthy, the expectation should be that they make the finals. If they aren't healthy, and let's say, they're banged up again, Mitchell's playing on one leg and they go 7, it's a really, really tough series against the Knicks. You're still kind of forced to make some decisions. Like you're like staring a Donovan Mitchell extension down the face, and you're now saying, hey, it's been 3-4 years here that he hasn't been healthy in the playoffs. Can we commit? If the same thing happens to Garland, you have to make those questions. If it happens to both guards again, you have to ask, okay, is it time to retool around Evan Mobley? The expectation based on this team being the better regular season team last year and going 4-0 against the Knicks last year should be that, hey, if we are healthy, we make the finals. If they don't make the finals, I think you do have to completely reevaluate the core. Maybe not, completely blow it up or whatever, but how you lose is going to be really important, right? That might force a decision about Jared Allen. Honestly, like even if things go well and you do make the finals, you're probably asking those decisions and kind of considering things with the role players, right? Like that's just the way that the NBA is right now. But it just from a timeline standpoint, you have decisions coming up about extensions for both Donovan Mitchell as well as Darius Garland. I think it just naturally comes to that point where you have to answer those questions if you don't accomplish your goals this season.
Yeah, the conversation that I used to have with Celtics fans last year and Celtics creators on this show was very much that even if they win the title and sweep their way through the playoffs, there's going to be roster conversations to have because of this new world of the second apron. And, you can liken, we just talked about the Heat, that run that they went on a couple of years ago to the finals and went through the Knicks to get there, but they went through the Celtics. So the Celtics got to a game 7 of the conference finals and lost and still made wholesale changes to their roster. And that was more for basketball reasons. Whereas the Cavs, it may be both if they lose in the conference finals again. Well, I say again, but if they lose to the Knicks, and even if that is technically progress, it would be a step back. It sounds like
I think it would be basketball reasons at that point. Like
it wouldn't be money reasons. You're saying.
I think so. Dan Gilbert is always willing to spend on this team. I think it would be more basketball reasons than anything else. Like if things go well, let's say, they make the finals, or best case scenario, they win a championship somehow next year. I still think you have decisions, right? Like not with the top 6, maybe Max Strus. I would say probably not with the top 6, but you probably have decisions like Sam Merrill or Lonzo Ball, right? Do you have kind of the internal guys coming up that are going to occupy some of those minutes, right? Like I think part of why they let Ty Jerome go is, hey, we feel really good about Jalen Tyson stepping into this role. We think he can make a really big difference. We're pretty stoked about drafting Tyrese Proctor. We did some draft shenanigans to get him in Cleveland, and that seems to be panning out, right? Does that allow some flexibility a little further down the roster, right? So I think those would be the types of decisions that they'd make. I don't think that there's any scenario where everything goes great, they win a championship or go 7 against the Thunder, and they're like moving Darius or Donovan for financial reasons. I just can't see that.
Well, let's talk more about this roster and how the new look Cavs and the Lonzo Ball edition and the Larry Nance edition. Tell me, what can Knicks fans expect from the new Cavs and how they fit in well so far? How excited are Cavs fans, I should say, or not excited about the newest additions to the Cleveland Cavaliers?
I think people are pretty stoked. I think people are really, really happy about this roster. My personal opinion is I think this is the best roster the Cavs have had since 2017. I think that this is a really, really good deep team, and it's going to be a dogfight for a lot of these guys to get minutes. Kenny Atkinson has been singing the praises of Jalen Tyson all offseason. He's really, really excited about what he's bringing to the table, kind of that, 6'6" Josh Hart is kind of what they're hoping for there, running some offense. I hate
amazing.
to do that though. But they're hoping for, that Josh Hart type of impact from him. The thing I'll mention with Tyson and where I pump the brakes compared to some Cavs fans is he's the one guy on the roster that did not have good perimeter defensive numbers at all. And like they're hoping that he becomes basically a stopper. Like that's kind of one of the things is they're asking him to guard Donovan all the time in practice. They've asked him to improve his lateral quickness. He's dropped some weight. He's moving really well in the preseason, but I still have some skepticism about kind of his lateral quickness on guards in particular. I feel okay with forwards, but that's something I'm keeping an eye on. But the Lonzo risk or gamble, I should say, is one that I advocated for them making even weeks before it happened. And basically, it's kind of following what the Thunder did, right? The Thunder had so many draft picks that all hit. Everything kind of worked from a development standpoint. But they're sitting there with Josh Giddey, the top 10 pick that they just didn't have the room to kind of develop. And they moved him for Alex Caruso, who was an injury risk, but was able to bring in a little bit extra from the bench, right? And can kind of change how it feels to play against them. Cavs had the exact same scenario with Isaac Okoro. They move him for Lonzo Ball. And I think the theory there is last year we liked having some 3-guard lineups out there. We played quite a bit of it because Ty Jerome and Sam Merrill just were playing at a level that required that you give them minutes. And it was always along Darius and Donovan. But that did make you really small. Now you can play those 3-guard lineups with Lonzo Ball. And I think the theory there is just getting a little bit more ball movement. He's not a great on-ball defender, but he's a really active on-ball off-ball defender. Someone that gets steals, that creates havoc on the defensive end, and is going to help make things easier for everybody else. So I think people are really, really excited about Lonzo, and what they saw in the preseason obviously has helped that as well.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that I see the comp that you're talking about. Okoro for Lonzo being Giddey for Caruso. The injury risk, in my opinion, is a bit more significant.
Huge.
For Lonzo, played 70 games. I just looked it up. 70 games in the last 4 seasons. I do think he, in the Knicks to Cavs comp, in the Knicks Cavs matchup, it's as much of a wild card as Mitchell Robinson's health. Because if a healthy Mitchell Robinson is available for a Cavs series, and that is such a wild card.
I'd say it's different. I would have more faith in Mitchell like being available in the playoffs than I would with Lonzo. Lonzo to me is like, that's a plus, right? Like
right.
You're kind of, I'm not counting on him for the playoffs. And if things go sideways, he's an expiring contract that they can use at the trade deadline, right? Like I think that's part of it too, as a chip to potentially attach a first round pick to. But yeah, it's, not only is it unheard of for him to make it to the playoffs, right? From a physical standpoint, he hasn't played in a playoff game.
Right.
Like I would say if I'm comparing the two, I would have much more confidence in Mitch.
I 100% agree with it's not the same identically. It's just as far as wild cards for health are concerned. If you're looking at these teams on paper in a matchup over 7 games, I evaluate them differently based off of, well, if Lonzo's there for 7 games, they have an extra guy to play off ball in certain lineups and can be a ball handler in certain situations. I don't have to tell Cleveland Cavalier fans what Mitchell Robinson did a couple years ago, but what I can remind
greatest 9-9 in postseason history.
But in real talk, it was the greatest 9-9 postseason history.
It wasn't even a double-double,
right?
But it actually was that impactful. Yeah.
By the end of the series, it was just like we did this series this summer, the 25 greatest Knicks of the past 25 seasons. And yes, the back end of this list was an interesting experience.
Yes.
But going through the Mitch greatest hits and finding his signature moment, Knicks fans have heard this. I'll never forget the end of game 4 where RJ takes a 3 and both Allen and Mobley go to double team Mitchell Robinson on the boards because they just we have no way how to stop this guy. So both of us are going to go box him out. Josh Hart gets the rebound as a result, finds Brunson for the 3, Knicks up 10. That's the type of impact he could have. I will just also say he didn't play the year before because of injuries and left by the middle of the mid first round. And Joel Embiid did a thing, and so Mitchell Robinson was hurt for the end of the Sixers series.
It's so weird that always happens with Nick Nurse teams, eh?
It's interesting. Oh wow, you went Nick Nurse with it. I didn't realize it was a Nick Nurse. Wow.
Oh yeah,
okay.
There's a blood feud there.
Okay, well, we just have beef with Joel Embiid, but I'm happy to extend it to Nick Nurse. Where I'm going with this is there are some wild cards in the Knicks Cavs matchup, and off the bat, let's just start here. What strengths do you believe in a Knicks Cavs matchup that the Cavs go into that series having as of right now?
I would say one of them is I just don't like from a defensive standpoint. I don't worry about the creation of anybody not named Jalen Brunson. And I do think that makes things a whole lot easier, right? Like I think the Cavs have two bigs that are very comfortable defending both at the rim and out on the perimeter. And that helps against Karl-Anthony Towns. And
hold on. I'm laughing because from a creation standpoint, like Jordan Clarkson will create, whether or not it's productive or anything or not. He will create his own shine, whether it's in the flow of an offense or anything like that.
That's right. You know the Jordan Clarkson. As Cavs fans, we were wondering if that was possible 7 years ago, and it'll be 8 years ago once we actually get to the playoffs, right? We were wondering if that contributed to winning and helpful basketball alongside, a top 3 all-time player, LeBron James, right? So I think that's one of the things. And also just compared to past years, Brunson, the Knicks often put on the Cavs small forward, right? Like even when it was Max Strus, they would put him over there, but primarily when it was Isaac Okoro, thinking back to that playoff series 2 years ago. It's a lot harder to do that against DeAndre Hunter, who is just very, very comfortable getting his own bucket. Last year, basically averaged 20 points per game, both with Atlanta and the Cavs. If you're kind of looking at that per 36 production, he's even in preseason, they're using him a whole lot more, flashing quick post ups and things like that when guards are switched on to him. So I think that's going to be a little bit more difficult. I just think it's different. And we talked about this last year. What really made the Cavs struggle in that playoff series was the ability to get to the rim, right? Like RJ, for all his flaws, was getting to the rim, causing havoc. Even when, he'd miss, it would create those offensive rebound opportunities. Everyone's in a scramble. Manuel quickly was able to provide that. I just don't see who's doing that outside of Jalen Brunson. And it feels like they're equipped to defend Cat. And on the other side, I think that this is a Cavs team that makes it very difficult to play Cat at the 5. You are giving up a lot of size. He is someone that the Cavs are going to be able to target with those bigs. They targeted him a lot last year. I just feel like those are kind of the matchup strengths for Cleveland. But I'm also aware that the Knicks do have more firepower than the Cavs when it comes to potentially making an in-season move as well, right? So I think that's something to consider.
I mean, depends who you ask. They're like hundreds of thousands of dollars shy of the second apron. So they're right up against it.
Relative to the Cavs.
Relative to the Cavs, you're right. They're able to make an in-season move.
You guys can still aggregate salaries, right?
We can. I get lost on that apron. I think they can, but they can't. I think take in more money than they can send out. Is
right.
What
we can't combine salaries at all, right? Which is maybe one of those reasons, right? When you're looking at the lack of offseason moves, Jared Allen in particular, that's the one everyone points at. He makes Alex Caruso money. Like he's making $20 million this year. Like, what are you going to trade him for? Rui Hachimura? Like that's not going to make you a better basketball team, right? So the Cavs are just really limited in that sense of what they can do.
I think we're due for another conversation post All-Star break, post trade deadline, if these two teams look differently and if the season goes as we think it might go. I think the question I would have then on the inverse of what I just asked you of what do you think the Cavs' biggest weaknesses are? Because I do agree about the Cat at the 5 thing. I think against some second units, that would be advantageous. When I go into a Cavs series, I mean, I said it at the top, I need Mitch healthy for 7 Cavs games. That's like the goal of this season is for Mitch to be healthy for 7 Cavs games. I need Josh Hart. I don't have to tell Cavs fans about what Josh Hart did in that series. and that maybe there was a chain pop a couple of years later that Cavs fans didn't like very much. But you see what I'm saying? Like, the Knicks have a different look that is specifically, in my opinion, suited it to play well against the Cavs, with like Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson playing big roles. Is that also a fear on the Cavs side of things? Like, what do you think is the Knicks' biggest advantage going into a Cavs series?
I think the biggest advantage is, you know, as I mentioned before, Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, you can throw those guys on the guards, right? Like, you can potentially bottle them up to some extent. Now, Garland kind of had his way with Mikal Bridges last year. I don't think Mikal is as good on guards as he used to be. I think, you know, Jaylen Brown only going one direction is a little easier.
Let's say like, every guard had their way with Mikal Bridges last year. Yeah,
and OG historically has really made life hell for Donovan Mitchell. Last year was kind of the first year where Mitchell did score very well against OG, but I still kind of lean towards that history. And if we're looking at the opening night matchup without Darius Garland, that's a big fear of mine. Like, Mitchell loves to use his physicality on defenders. And when he runs into a Lou Dort or a Nembhard or an OG that doesn't really allow that, it does make things a whole lot more difficult. And you can maybe see that offense kind of get bogged down. And the other kind of fear that I'd have against the Knicks is Mitchell does always kind of want to make a statement against the Knicks. And sometimes that's nice. Sometimes he presses a lot and it causes other guys to not get involved, and he's throwing pick sixes the other direction, right? So I think those are kind of the main concerns. I would hope that after last year, they kind of got over some of their demons against the Knicks, because it did seem like that was a team that would get in their head sometimes. You know, I think back to even that late season matchup where there was no Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Tyson's playing like 30 minutes, and Garland was still, you know, having his way with Mikal. They're throwing OG at help, and he's, you know, even dealing with some of that turf toe in that matchup, he was able to get to his spot. So I feel better about it, but there's just too much history of teams blitzing and putting pressure on the guards and them not relying on the other guys around them to make life easier for them. And I think when you look at the Cavs offseason, whether it be the new additions they brought in or the guys that they're empowering, like a Jalen Tyson, it's playmaking. Lonzo, playmaking from, you know, the perimeter. Larry Nance, that's someone that you can use as a hub. That is a really, really gifted passer. I'm so excited to have Larry on this roster. Jalen Tyson was basically in the Luka role at Cal, right? He's a hustle guy, but he is someone that gets out in transition, makes really nice reads, so that has some playmaking talent. And then Tyrese Proctor, I don't think he's going to play this year, but also, my God, he was so good in Summer League. He's so good in preseason. And this is someone that I could see, like, normally, like the rookies that end up later in drafts end up having a role are guys that can play defense, which that has always been kind of his reputation. He's a really good defender. He's 6'5", 6'6", with a good wingspan, and he shoots the hell out of the ball. I can see him potentially pushing like a Sam Merrill or Craig Porter Jr., those guys out of the way to potentially getting a role. I just think it's going to be next season. But if there's someone kind of a dark horse rotation guy, I do think Proctor could potentially be that guy, because he is, the praise he's getting is noteworthy from guys that don't usually hand it out. Like, Kenny was very reserved last year with Tyson, even though he ended up playing some minutes. Kenny was kind of hesitant. He's all in on Proctor. Donovan has been saying how, like, Proctor's basically been hounding him, like watching film with him, went to work out with him at his home in the offseason, all that kind of stuff. So he's a guy I definitely have my eye on.
Gotta say, it's refreshing to hear somebody, a contender even, to talk about the back end of their roster, because we just when certain Knicks fans do it about the guys on our roster, the Tyler Koliks, the Pacome Dadiers, the Ariel Hukportis, I like them all in theory. I don't have any real evidence. Some moments with Tyler Kolek, I'll say. I think he's a really gifted passer, but I don't know as a shooter, if he'll, or even a creator, I guess is the right way to say it, if he'll be able to be an NBA. A backup is probably where we're headed, like TJ McConnell, but a better passer. But look,
the Proctor thing's wild because, like, he came into that last season being as, hey, like, dark horse, maybe fringe lotto type guy. And then he comes in and has a better season. He ups his 3-point volume. He scores more efficiently from the field, scores better from three. He is a really good defender. And he plays with an entire starting lineup that got drafted, right? Like every single person in that Duke starting lineup ended up being an NBA player. And despite, moving forward, I'm not like a draft guy. I don't watch college and all that, but like I went back and I listened to all the podcasts before the draft even occurred, and everyone's like, yeah, really high floor. Like I think he's going to be at like the bare minimum rotation player. But he's probably going to slip just a little bit because what's the ceiling? I don't care about the ceiling, man. If you're a ninth man for the Cavs, like that is such a great hit for a second round pick.
I'm annoyed now that we're not going to get to see him probably on Wednesday night. Or are you saying that we will? You say we might. Okay.
With Darius.
Well, Knicks fans, you just heard the greatest endorsement for Proctor of all time.
I'm all in. I'm all in. And I love my Australians. When the Cavs win a championship, we have an Australian in the mix. So let's go.
Clearly, one correlates to the other. That's my biggest fear. Not whether or not they could score on Mobley, or if Mitchell, if they can't stop him, or if Cat becomes more of a traffic cone.
You're worried about
no.
You're worried about Outback Andrew Nemhard.
Exactly. I got to get my terminology right. Cat's a matador. It's Brunson. That's the traffic cone. I keep forgetting what NBA Twitter told me. We've talked a lot of Knicks Cavs. Is there anybody else we should be concerned about? Like, what's the team that you're like, if it's not the Knicks that you should be afraid of in the East, who is it?
I think it's Orlando. I think Detroit's going to take a little bit of a step back this year, or kind of spin their wheels in the same spot. Like Malik Beasley was arguably their second best player last year. Mm-hmm. And, I just still have some kind of concerns and questions when I look at that roster, right? Like it's nice to have Duncan Robinson, but like Miami's pulled him out of the rotation many times. But Orlando, man, like that team turns every single game into a muddy rock fight. Like even against the Boston Celtics last year, right? Like that team, missing Jalen Suggs, who's their best defensive player, still managed to completely muck up Boston's offense. I think the physical toll that series had on Boston contributed to them in the next round, right? Like when you talk to Celtics people, like they say that all the time. I think the same thing happened to Cleveland the year before. I want to be on the other side of the bracket as Orlando, because that's a team that I think the Cavs would beat. I think the Knicks would beat them, but it's going to impact your next round.
Yeah, survive them. Yeah.
And plus, like when you're in all these close games, when you have someone as talented as Paolo Banchero, like if he figures it out for a series, that can be something that swings things, right? But my biggest thing with Orlando, and why I don't have them in the same tier as the Cavs or the Knicks, is I think they're making a gamble that either Paolo or Franz, or the combination of the two of them, can be a primary initiator for an offense, like a high level or top 10 offense. And I just don't see it. Like, Desmond Bane, that's a great pickup. That's a great addition. But having one player on your roster that can shoot isn't like all of a sudden making all the spacing magically better. And like in a perfect world, if I wanted to fix those rosters, I would swap De'Aaron Fox for Desmond Bane, and I think that would make both teams a whole lot better. I think they needed that type of playmaker, but they seem to be kind of doubling down on basically, we're going to create offense in the aggregate the way that the Boston Celtics did. And that it's not the same level of basketball IQ. It's not the same level of playmaking that the Celtics had. And it sure as hell isn't the same level of shooting. So I've got questions with them, but I think they can muddy up any series, and that gives them a puncher's chance.
There's one other element. It's also not the same level of superstar. Like Paolo's not Jason Tatum. Franz isn't Jaylen Brown at this point in their careers. So I have
Franz is probably closer to Denny Avdia than he is Jaylen Brown. And that's also praise of Denny Avdia.
Right. Denny was really good last year.
He was really good. Yeah.
Yeah. When Portland toward the end of the season. What's funny is my team's Atlanta that I'm staring at, and it's specifically a Knicks issue. Their pick and roll terrifies me in a series and it's like a similar issue to the Cavs. Like they would just bring Brunson or Cat into the action and
every time.
Like spam it left and so now, but Trae Young, you want to talk about series that I wish Mitchell Robinson played in. I wish that first series that the Knicks made the playoffs with Julius Randle as a 4 seed. And it's just like, we have no answer at the rim. It's what's left of Taj Gibson and Nerlens Noel. And like, respect to Taj Gibson, did the best that he could, but the Knicks' primary point of attack defense was like Reggie Bullock, who just got roasted in that series. And I'm now staring at a series where they could bring Brunson or Cat into the action, and now he's got a stretch 5 potentially. Yeah. So I'm a little concerned about the Hawks.
I get it with Atlanta.
In that context, I gotta say, are we disrespecting Giannis in that neither of us even thought to say the Bucks? Or is that like the whole point that nobody cares, nobody's afraid of the Bucks, and that's probably why Giannis won't be there very long?
I mean, the Bucks are owned by the same band that owns the Cleveland Browns, and I think making Kyle Kuzma your number 2 is a very Cleveland Browns
probably not the best way to go.
Yeah. The problem is Giannis is the best player in the conference, but the rest of the roster is not great.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because that's usually the thing that informs me is that, well, they have the best player in the series. In no Bucks series in either of our matchups, am I going to say, well, they have the best player in the series, I'm picking them? No, I would pick the Knicks. I would pick the Cavs. The thing
is, my friend, we're getting old.
Series.
We are from a time where the best player often was enough, and the league is just deeper now. Teams are better. Like the second and third bananas on, even fringe playoff teams are a whole lot better than they used to be. It's just not enough. Like, I have a lot of respect for Giannis, obviously. I do think he is the best player in the conference, but he might not even be on that roster come All-Star playoffs.
Yeah, let's say maybe that's the big change that we're talking about come All-Star break. That
I am skeptical that you guys have.
Oh, so am I. Don't get me wrong. It's just more fun for me to tell you that the Knicks are going to be facing the Cavs with Giannis in a couple months.
I think we swept him last year too. So it's a combined 8-0.
So you go into that saying, we're not worried about Giannis or
we're
the
already
Knicks,
up
but combined. Justin. 2 more questions before we get out of here. I have a random Cavs NBA question.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple weeks ago, LeBron James announced that he was going to be making a decision 2.0 on socials, like the next day at noon. And I like to think that I'm perceptive. Even I was like, oh my gosh, LeBron's going to retire tomorrow, like announce his retirement.
Really?
I got to be honest. I fell for it completely. I'm someone that is online. I feel he's going to be 40 years old in year 23 or 41 in year 23 this year. And I'm not going to say it was 100% that's what's going to happen, but I was like, it's probably like 60, 40, 70, 30. This is going to be a retirement announcement. And when the Hennessy ad came out, I was like, oh, he got me. And I'm curious, just specifically from a Cavs fan perspective, who actually lived through the decision, the first one, in the worst way, shape, or form.
Oh, yeah.
How you received this now mockery of what could be a triggering point for sports fans, and then just how you're experiencing the end of LeBron's career, that he's the greatest player in Cavs history, maybe the greatest player of all time, depending on who you ask. And he's doing this at the end of his career with the Lakers and having like feuds with them about whether or not he wants to be there when he's no longer the face of the team anymore.
Well, first of all, I thought the first giveaway was there's no way that he would announce his retirement and it wouldn't be via his own media company. He would also announce that way ahead of time so that everyone is able to get their ducks in a row. And
wouldn't be at noon either. Yeah,
exactly. Right. So LeBron doesn't operate that way. I no part of me thought that the retirement was coming. It was just trying to figure out what the ad was going to be. And I also didn't think that he was going to associate the end of his career or have the end of his career announcement be associated with, kind of one of those arguable low light moments for him, from a PR
could be looked at as a redemptive thing. Like, hey, this used to mean something bad. Now it's going to mean something good. But again, you're right. I was wrong. I missed it. But
the man's corny, so you can't rule it out. How am I experiencing it? I think it's funny that he stayed in LA as long as he has. Like every other team, he always held to a very high standard from a team building standpoint, and that just hasn't seemed to be a priority with the Lakers. The Lakers' tenure to me gives me a pass in my mind where I don't have to sit here and defend LeBron. I do not feel obligated to do so. My personal opinion, when you're talking greatest player of all time, is the top 3 is LeBron, Mike, and Kareem in any order you want.
Right.
If you put those 3, as long as those are the top 3, you can put them in any order you want. And I will say, you know what? I get it. Good for you. LeBron, to me, I think he's the greatest player of all time, but I also understand all the cases against it, right? So I just kind of feel absolved from that. When there were rumors about, the Cavs and all that, I saw that for the kind of the bait and the pressure games with the Lakers that it is. I'm not naive. I think him coming back to Cleveland was a bit of a marketing stunt. Like, one, the Cavs were able to assemble. Like, I don't think if Kyrie wasn't as good as he was, and if they didn't have a trade lined up for either Kevin Love or LaMarcus Aldridge, who was the other name at the time, I don't think he's coming back to Cleveland. I think it was the best basketball decision. Pat Riley's big move for that offseason was we're going to trade for Danny Granger, right? Like it wasn't, they weren't going to win anymore in Miami, right? So it was the best basketball move and it was a good PR move. In order for the Cavs, as a second apron team to trade for him, they'd have to combine Garland and Allen. You'd also have to dump DeAndre Hunter or Max Strus, or maybe both, for absolutely nothing. No returning salary in return. You have to let Ty Jerome walk. You'd have to let Sam Merrill walk. And you'd have to fill out the last 8-9 roster spots with minimum contracts. That's not a great situation. That's not what LeBron's, going to do. That's not what the Cavs were going to do. There was no real interest there. So I saw it as a leverage play. Some Cleveland fans, I'll say in particular Browns fans, just have no creativity, and all they want is LeBron, no matter the cost and all that. So you're kind of having that internal war among the Cleveland fan base. But I would welcome him on a mid-level or a minimum contract or whatever. I just don't think that that's happening. I felt like it was more likely he'd go to the Warriors or back to Miami than to Cleveland.
Same. I would welcome LeBron James on a mid-level, the taxpayer mid-level specifically, since that's the only thing the Knicks.
That was an option going into last season, right? If he wanted to, I've made enough. I have $1 billion contract with Nike. I've made enough money. I can take a mid-level contract and just slot in nicely between Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley and Allen. They don't have to make any changes. They can keep all the depth. They can keep everything. I can just slot on in there. He's not going to take a pay cut. That's not LeBron.
He's not. I actually think there's some pride in it. I don't know if you just saw when Durant got his extension. Durant's made the most money ever of any NBA player now by like $80 million. So LeBron is probably looking for 1 to 2 more contracts. He's surpassed, but he's not going to play longer than Durant. So I think he's not going to play longer than Durant. Not. So I don't think he's going to be able to surpass him.
He's talked about that too, where he always felt that, one, like he took the pay cuts in Miami and he thought he was taken advantage of in that situation. But the other thing he's talked about is, if I take a pay cut, other teams are going to use that as an example for other players, right? And they're going to say, if LeBron's willing to take a pay cut, you should take a pay cut. And whether that is awareness just of kind of his standing, or whether that's a clutch related thing of understanding, the connection to other players represented and things like that. That just seems to be a motivating force for him.
Last question. So I explained it in the rundown, but I'll now explain it to the audience, that what I'm going to ask everybody at the end of every episode is to tell me what the game is, or that game is. And when I say that game, the Knicks just had a heartbreaking loss to the Indiana Pacers in game 1 of the conference finals that I cannot rewatch. I'm just not able to look at any highlight, any bad inbounds pass or missed free throw or Aaron Nesmith's shot or a bounce off the rim is just going to invoke that game. And in basically pointing to the most heartbreaking, devastating loss that your sports fan, your fan base is unable to relive. I know the Cavs just had a game 2 against the Pacers that was similar, but when I say that game to a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, what does that invoke? What game pops to mind?
So to me, the most devastating loss that I've had as a sports fan was the series against the 2009 Magic. But the thing about that is there isn't that game, right? Like I could say game 1 really easily. Delonte had the wide open shot in the corner, didn't hit it. That sucks. Hito Turkoglu hits a game winner. Whole team's on PEDs allegedly. That series drives me nuts. But there's not that one game. When you save that one game, it's game 1 NBA Finals of 2015. Where Iman Shumpert has that shot go off the rim, bounce in the air and not go in at the end of regulation. You go to overtime, Kyrie tears his ACL. You win the next 2 games despite that, but that's just one of those things that if that jump shot falls, maybe Kyrie doesn't tear his knee. Maybe you have a real chance to win the championship. Like, I still firmly believe, like, both teams fully healthy. I think those championships swap. I think the Cavs were the better team in 2015. I think the Warriors were the better team in 2016. I would not swap them because it's way more fun to have beat that team. And, you know, Steph doesn't win his first championship until 2022. Like, that's really cool. But, you know, like that's definitely kind of that when you say that game, that's the one I think of.
I gotta be honest. I thought you were saying a different game. And then you started to explain. I thought you were talking about the J.R. Smith forgets the score game.
Oh, God, no. That Cavs team should have lost in the first round of the Pacers,
like they almost lost to the Pacers.
They almost lost to the Celtics. That was not a team that had a chance to win a championship. If you're going to talk about a moment from that game, though, it's that block charge call where KD rams into LeBron. They win that game if that's called properly. It gets reviewed and it wasn't called properly. You know, the JR moment, like that's funny. That's memeable. I still think of George Hill missing the free throw more than that. But no, that team sucked. It didn't have a chance to win a championship unless it was coached by Nick Nurse, and all of a sudden you lose Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant.
Jeez, man. Okay. Well, I support
the Toronto Raptors.
I could tell. I would welcome that hatred to the Philadelphia 76ers.
I've got it. Carter has made the point that, like, if we play the Sixers in a series, that he's legitimately worried about what it would do to my health, because I just hate the way that team plays basketball.
It changes you. I'll tell you, it changes you. I went into that series being like, I don't really have any animosity against the Sixers. And now I see red, white, and blue for multiple reasons. And bad feelings are suddenly conjured. So,
but before we get out of here, I'm going to mess up the format because I know you want to ask that and you want to have continuity with all the previews and stuff like that. But there's a take I got to get off here.
Please do.
I really need to. Last year, going into the season, I said, this is the first year that I believe the Cavs have a legitimate chance to win a championship. We're going to find out if that's a 5% chance, whether that's a 20% chance, whatever the case may be, based on how they develop this season. This is the first season that Evan Mobley can be the best player on the Cleveland Cavaliers, even if Donovan has a career year. What I have seen from Mobley, he now has it all. He has everything that he needs to. The physical development is there. He is dramatically stronger than he was last year. Actually, that was one of the things Carter and I noticed when we were at Media Day. We're like, holy crap, this whole team was in the weight room this offseason. Like, Garland's a whole lot bigger. Mobley's a whole lot bigger. Naquan Tomlin's a whole lot bigger, you know, like up and down the roster. But Mobley now has kind of that physical size. You know, he's going to turn 25 years old before the playoffs. He's starting to get into that physical prime. Last year, he took such a big step forward where the 3-point shot was there. The handle got a little tighter. Both of those look a whole lot better in preseason. He's got his moves. He's got his counters. I think he has everything that he needs to. Now it's about, one, is he assertive enough to consistently do that? And two, if he is, how does Donovan react to that? Like, how do they balance? Do the guards prioritize them in the right ways? You can't blame them, though, right? Like, it is a collective effort to get him the ball and all that. But if we're talking about, hey, he needs to be that guy, he needs to be the best player on this roster, those types of players command that effort. So I think this is going to be a season, if you're looking at the regular season with the Cavs, which we understand, no matter what happens, it doesn't matter. The one thing that does matter is, how is Evan Mobley used? Is it consistent? Does it happen in the clutch, right? Like, just those kind of little nuances throughout an 82-game season. But I think this might be the season of Evan Mobley. And I firmly believe this is the first chance he has to be the best player on this roster.
So let's table that for a couple months. Well, I think I talked to Carter and I said he would be my Christmas Day guest, but maybe we make that a crossover or a home. Home.
You can go with Carter. I've said what I've said.
Okay, I want to revisit this later in the season to see if
we're meet in the Eastern Conference Finals.
That's very true. That's true. We'll have a whole 7-game series to preview at some point later this year. Look, I welcome it because I got a taste of the conference finals last year, and now I don't want to go back. I don't want to finish any round further, any round earlier than the conference finals. So I do hope we get that because it would mean more Knicks Film School Chase Down crossovers with you and with Carter and the entire crew over at the Cleveland Cavaliers. Before you get out of here, Justin, please let the fine folks at home know where they can find you and the Chase Down.
Thank you so much, man. Yeah, amazingly, season 9 for the Chase Down. This is the 9th season that we have covered on the podcast, which is absolutely nuts. You can find us on the Cavs YouTube channel. You can find us wherever you found this podcast as well. You guys know where to find podcasts.
At this point, I hope you know where to find.
Hey, man, it's 2025.
Any socials, you guys? What's your social plug for the
Chase Down Pod on socials. I'm bad
on all the things
on them. You can find me at Cavs Canada, Slap Cavs in Canada. I don't really post a whole lot anymore, but it's just not worth the upside for me.
I get it. Believe me, I get it.
yeah. But yeah, you can find me there, and I'm happy, man. Like I legitimately really enjoy Knicks fans. I enjoy the culture you guys have. I'm happy that we have a chance to kind of keep this rivalry going. It's a weird season that we're kind of the last two standing. And we'll see if that's ultimately the case in playoffs, but I'm happy that I like the dynamics of New York and Cleveland.
Well, best of luck outside of 3 games this year, and then hopefully we reconvene sometime at the end of May with all the
I thought the marbles. 3 games in the playoffs. I'm like, yeah, you guys can have 3.
No.
Let's go 7.
Well done, sir.
I'll take the 4.
Thank you, Justin, as always, for joining me, and thank you to everybody for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School Pregame Show. If you dug it, head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and review, like this video, remember to subscribe. I'll be back on Friday to preview the Knicks matchup against the Boston Celtics. Until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Let's go Knicks, and I will speak with you soon. Peace.
Must be 21 or over. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Not available in all states. Terms apply. See Fanatic Sportsbook app.